Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Dr. Hyena and today I'm back with another video. Now today we're going to be discussing what was the best version of Wild Savannah and why do I think that version was the best. So we're going to be covering four major versions of the game. We're going to be covering the 2017 Wild Savannah, which is the one I first played when I joined Roblox. The 2018 Wild Savannah, or random game slot rather, the two random game slots at the time actually, and we're going to be discussing the 2019/2020 versions because I think those are similar enough to be lumped into one, like one section of the video, right? And finally, we're going to be talking about 2021 to present day and what we're thinking we can kind of expect more or less in the future. So, let's get into it. The 2017 version of Wild Savannah was a very nostalgic version indeed. Again, it was one of the first versions of the game that I ever played, and it had some pretty hilarious mechanics. It had the buffalo flinging, the crocodile drowning, and it had a lot of exploiters and hackers at the time because there weren't any anti-exploits put into place, unfortunately. But, outside of nostalgic value, it really wasn't the best version of the game. There weren't any transitional animations from, like, say, idle to resting, or, like, resting to getting up, right? The animations in general were a bit funky, and I think that's because at the time Ludi kind of animated out of imagination rather than off of like video footage like he would later learn to do. And the mechanics were like, other than the few that I mentioned earlier, the buffalo flinging, lion drowning, they were kind of poor, to be honest, But that's nothing against Ludi. I think that actually kind of favors him in that, he's really come a long way, so yeah. The 2018 version of Wild Savannah was easily my favorite version of the game. It didn't have any hyenas, but it did have something we don't have right now. A complete game with a solid development cycle. This is when you had the good pouncing added with one lion could pounce at the front to like choke the animal out while one could keep it down from behind. And even if the animal was being choked out, it still had a chance to escape. And the key thing with that was that it didn't require the sliding bar that we have right now, which I'll discuss that later, but I feel like that has a lot of issues. You had a great map at the time. In fact, I still think that's the best map we've gotten so far. Sure, maybe not the most fancy and like decorated map of all time, but it was still a good map nonetheless. It was still interesting to look at and navigate, and kind of feel your way across the land. It was very interesting in that regard, and I think that's something that should be kept in mind for the new map. In 2018, that's probably the time when Ludi kind of started animating his animals off of actual video footage of them, and those animations looked really great, especially in comparison to the 2017 ones. This was a massive, massive step forward, and it was very much needed for sure. Let's see, the models, the new ones that we got, and even like revamps of the old ones, like the wildebeest, got like the better, fur and stuff, like on the mane and the beard. Those were great, right? It was a big step forward, and you had like the zebra and the warthog. Those were like just added to the game at the time, a couple of weeks, or like a month or two apart from each other. That was great. That was really great, and the warthog digging was a lot of fun. The zebra, like the headshotting lions, was a lot of fun, and I think how the damage worked back then, maybe it wasn't great, but it worked, if that makes sense, Like, you wouldn't have all these herbivores just being able to easily kill the apex predator, which was the lion, right? You wouldn't have that. And because of that, while herbivores could save each other from lions, it wasn't a bunch of like KOSers, unless again you got lucky with like a zebra headshotting a lion. And the ecosystem felt more balanced because of that. The predator and prey dynamic was much more defined than what we have right now, right? And overall, the development cycle was much more consistent than what we have right now. Again, it was like week after week, month after month, whatever. Or for the most part, like week after week, you'd see like new features getting added in, like the jumping, the resting animations, all that. It was very consistent, and that is something that I believe we do lack, and we have been lacking ever since that version. And then, of course, how could we forget Random Game Slot C, which had the lion combat? That was a lot of fun. Now, I know I have a lot of friends on Discord who are like really big Big Cat fans, and they had a blast with that. So did I. Even though I sucked at it, it was still a lot of fun. It was a combat system that was fairly simple for the most part, but still required quite a bit of skill. And it was simple and in-depth at the same time, if that makes sense, without being overly complicated. And I think that is something that that Ludi should strive for the next version that we get. So yeah. And actually adding more onto that, I think Ludi should have just fixed up that version and remodeled the game from there and like added the new animals to that one, rather than like do what he did back in like 2019, which was like restart. We'll get into that in a second. But I think restarting the game from scratch was frankly a poor decision. Again, I do wish he would have stuck with that version of the game and that development cycle which he had, which was very consistent at the time. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on the 2018 version of Wild Savannah, or versions. Alright, so now we move into the 2019 and 2020 versions of Wild Savannah, which I feel are similar enough to be clumped into one section of this video, but not necessarily for the best reason. So, a bunch of new animals were added in 2019, which was great, but they were all very rushed and very incomplete. Even animals that had been in the game prior to this were missing many of their animations, even the ones that, again, they had prior. I don't know what's up with that. There were positives to this version too, though. Like the pouncing animations looked nice, but again, I feel the 2018 mechanics for the pouncing were significantly better than anything we've gotten ever since, right? And I suppose, what made that version stick out to me, this 2019 and 2020 version, was probably the fun wars that we would have, the good old lion versus hyena wars, and that's how Dr. Hyena got popular, right? But outside of that, the development cycle definitely slowed down very dramatically, and if you actually think about it, there's been rumors about this supposed recode ever since back then. Um, he's like Ludi's been talking about like, oh yeah, all the animals are gonna have this updated control script and they're gonna have all their missing animations. That's been a thing he's been talking about ever since 2020, even late 2019 actually. And I think that's a good segue to bring us into what we have today. Alright, so now we discuss the versions of Wild Savannah from 2021 to the present day. Now, there are some positives here.
Okay, now I launch my
the
attack.
sliding bar is here, but the problem with that is it comes with a plethora of glitches and other issues, and frankly, I feel it's
Alright, let's do
it's
this.
not a necessary feature. Again, I think if we just had the pouncing system from 2018,
I don't see the other
combined
guys, so.
with kind of like the lion versus hyena
Okay,
pouncing
got
system, where
one.
like predators,
See how many I can
when they're
get.
caught, they can like claw back at you. If we had that, that would be quite nice. And hopefully we get that in the future. But the way that it works right now, for like the other animals, it isn't exactly the best. And
Come on, who's next?
especially for like lion versus buffalo, I think is especially flawed. Not so much in terms of the sliding bar, because that doesn't matter there, which is good. But in the fact that lions can't grab the buffalo's neck before they collapse. I don't know what's up with that, because lions do that all the time in real life. It's not that uncommon if you if you have like a lion that like ambushes a buffalo that's like running by, right? Like you should be able to do that in the game. So I don't know what Ludi was thinking there. I'm sorry, but yeah. I think the mechanics have slightly improved since 2020, slightly. But the real elephant in the room here, the real problem, it is that the development cycle is really all over the place. Now, I think why this is a problem, it's because, the recode update, it's supposed to be like this really big, huge thing that's being, really hyped up. Mostly by the community, though, so I'm not going to fault Ludi for that. But I do think that, on Ludi's part, he could have, this isn't anything against him, but I think it's important that him and the community both take, again, like I said in my last video, all factors into account before, commenting on something or reporting something, right? Like reporting progress, because life gets in the way, right? And that's why even for my stuff like Into the Jungle, I always am sure to mention that. I'm always sure to mention hey, this isn't for sure, guys, right? And the game is happening, but I can't say for sure when it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? And I think if Ludi kind of embraced that, and if the community kind of realized that, then we wouldn't really have the issues that we have today, which is, where's the recode, right? And I understand where the community is coming from with that, because like I was saying earlier, from 2021 to and even after 2021, like late 2021 to current Wild Savannah, nothing has changed, or nothing significant has changed. Sure, there's been a couple of map additions which were nice, but overall the game is still very, very much the same. And I think that's a little bit worrying. I know there's been development behind closed doors. I think we all know that. But I don't know. I'm kind of sad, really, about how the game's kind of arguably declined, especially since around 2018. And that's a good segue to our outro here. Like let's talk about that. So the reason I say the game has declined since 2018, it's mainly because, what we're seeing now with the whole recode situation and all that, um, it's really just Ludi trying to like start the game over and over and over again, ever since like 2019 ish. Actually, no, he's been doing it for longer than that. But that's nothing against him. But I don't think it's a good idea. Um, I don't think it has resulted in anything particularly beneficial for the game. You know, um, I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer or whatever, but that really doesn't seem to be the case. Again, like I mentioned back in the 2018 section, I think he should have just fixed random game slot back then after Roblox broke it. Should have added random game slot C to A, if that makes sense, with the lion combat and stuff. And then he could have added like the models for the other animals and all that, and all the new animals and all that stuff, right? I think if he had done that, we would be like years ahead in terms of development of like what we're at right now. Um, Especially if he had kept like whatever he was doing at the time, he was doing something right there with his development cycle. Um, if he had just kept with that, that would have been significantly beneficial for the game, right? And I know, I know that it's one of those things where it's like, oh, would have, could have, should have done that. But I think it's not too late to learn from that experience. Like Ludi, if you're watching this, which I'm pretty sure you will be, though I don't know if you'll watch this far into it. I think what you could do is, after the recode comes out, like the phase 1 or whatever, you can just continue adding on to that. And even with like the remodels and stuff, I don't think you have to like restart the whole game just because of like new models and stuff, or even new mechanics. The key is to add on to what's there rather than just scrap everything and start all over again. So yeah, that's been my thoughts on Wild Savannah for quite a bit now, and I thought it would be good to put this all out there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you had maybe a bit of a nostalgia trip. I sure did. And yeah, if you enjoyed, leave a like, share with a friend, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So yeah, till then, take care, peace out, and goodbye.